prescription drugs didn't even really know what they had. So it for me, was it brought to light the fact that we need to take this at least serious to the point where we're doing our due diligence as far as trying to identify kids that are struggling with this problem. The pills tend to be a precursor to some other things. And if you think that it's not happening here, we're being a little naive. And I will also point out the kids that we found with these items are not the ones that we're typically looking at. So what we want to do is take a minute here, take a little bit during this staff meeting, talk a little bit about the epidemic of heroin that we have going on, how it has become that, how the pills kind of lead to that. Hear a little bit about some other people's stories so that we can identify some things in our kids. One of the best ways to avoid this is early identification and being aware, knowing what we're looking for. So I wanted to try to give you that piece of information so that you're aware of what's going on in this community that we're working in, so that we can be responsible towards the young people that we have in our care. So without any further ado, we're going to pull up Chad, and he's going to talk, and we're just going to, you can introduce the next person, Chad, and we'll keep going like that, all right?
My name is Chad Swara. I'm with an organization called St. Louis Heroin Help. And we are basically coming today. We usually have a bit more time than this, so I'm going to go fast through a lot of information. I'm going to speak on the history, basically, of heroin, prescription pain addiction, how that leads up to heroin addiction, because of the disease concept of addiction. Then we have two addicts that are going to speak, and then we're going to have a mom speak who lost her daughter. And just to put this out there, because I do it all the time, I am a heroin addict. I don't use drugs anymore. I've been clean for quite a while. And as the principal said, a lot of the kids you found were the ones that you would be thinking the ones that have drugs on them. This is a disease. It doesn't discriminate. I was a Cook County prosecuting attorney when I got hooked on prescription painkillers, which led to heroin addiction, which led to me going from, and I don't go into my story when I talk because that's not why I'm here, but I just give you that piece of information. You know, within a year, I was living in a $1 million house in the suburbs of Chicago to a homeless shelter in Belleville, Illinois, because of my drug addiction. So, doesn't discriminate, doesn't care how much money you have, where you came from, who your parents were. It's a disease just like cancer. And if you're susceptible to it, and you take your allergy of choice, and for a lot of people it's opiates, it will take you down. And it only has one mission, and that's to kill you. So, just to give a quick snapshot, because everyone's pretty much aware that there's a huge opiate problem, not only in Collinsville and surrounding areas of Illinois, but pretty much around the country. If you're not, I'll break it down like this. Every 19 minutes in America, somebody dies from an opiate overdose. In Missouri, according to the latest stats, the amount of accidental, these are all accidental, the amount of accidental deaths from opiate overdoses is almost twice as much as those from car accidents. And one thing I'm going to touch on too is that a lot of these deaths are avoidable and preventable. Being on this side of the river in Illinois, and this information I think you need to have so you can also pass on to your students, you have two laws here that were put into place to save people's lives and protect not only addicts but random people that take prescription painkillers because they are deadly if done in combination and if taken too much. And touch on these real brief, but you have something called the 9/11 Good Samaritan Law, which was passed last June in Springfield. What that basically states is that if somebody's overdosing and you call for an ambulance or call for help, nobody is going to catch a case for possession. Back in the days when I was out there, if I was overdosing and they called for an ambulance, they would shoot me up with Narcan, which stops the overdose, and then they would put the handcuffs on me and arrest me for possession of a controlled substance for the drugs that were in my body. That's why a lot of people are dying, because they're scared to go to jail. Even parents I have talked to who would say, my child is overdosing right now, what do? Call the police. I don't want my kid to go to jail. That fear cripples people and it kills them. We also have a drug available in Illinois called naloxone, generic name Narcan. That's what EMTs and other people give to pull people out of overdoses. It is available in Illinois for the Overdose Prevention Act that was also passed last year. So if you need this information to pass on, you have it. you can go to your primary care physician, you can go to other places, and you can get naloxone to take home. It comes in a nasal spray and what's called an intramuscular shot, which goes right in your arm. Anybody can administer this and save somebody's life. So, real quick, just about heroin, just so you guys know where it came from. Came into creation right after the Civil War. A lot of vets were hooked on morphine. So the Bayer Corporation, it was in 1895, they invented heroin in order to treat morphine addiction. Heroin is 40 times stronger and about 100 times more addictive than morphine. You know, hindsight was foresight, whatever. It happened, and that's how we got heroin. There wasn't really a big dope problem, heroin problem. Growing up, it was more of the speakeasy things in the 20s and 30s in the clubs. And then in World War II, because of its long-acting existence in the human body, what was created was something called methadone. It was actually created by the Nazis, so their soldiers could, have pain medication that didn't have to be administered every couple hours, because methadone lasts for a couple days. After the creation of that, they started treating heroin addiction with methadone. There really wasn't, you never really heard about heroin problem all the way up until the 70s during the Vietnam War. If anybody's seen the movie American Gangster with Denzel Washington, that's when we had our first epidemic in the 70s, and that's when everybody started learning about heroin and the treatment option, which back in the day was only methadone. Things have really, really moved forward since then. There's 2 more drugs that are on the market that are used to treat heroin addiction. Again, just information so you have it. One of them has been around since the 70s, although it wasn't available in the U.S. until about 15 years ago. It's called Suboxone. What that drug does is it eliminates, one of the hardest parts in the beginning about quitting heroin is the withdrawals. They're horrible. It feels like you're dying. What this methadone does and what Suboxone does is it eliminates the withdrawals. So there's 2 options for detox now, them both being methadone and Suboxone. Suboxone you take once a day, methadone you take once a day. There's another drug called Vivitrol that's completely new on the market. It's a shot you get once a month. It blocks the opioid receptors in your brain, so if you use heroin, you cannot get high. It also helps with the cravings. So there's real treatment options available for people that want help. Only option is that there's a lot of, especially in Illinois, you don't have a lot of funding, so there's not a lot of places for kids to go that need help. But one of the biggest things we're trying to promote and talk about is the stigma of addiction. Because a lot of the reasons that people stay out there for so long is because they're scared to admit that they're an addict, and the parents are also scared to admit that their kid has an addict because of how society is going to look down on them. I'll tell this story real quick. We had a kid about a year ago who was partying with his friends up in his room at his parents' house. He overdosed. They were going to take him to the hospital. That wasn't an issue, but his parents were downstairs. So they lowered him out of the second-story bedroom on a blanket to take him to the ER. And they weren't scared about going to jail, but they were scared about his parents finding out that he was using drugs. Kid passed away because just scared to say, Mom and Dad, this is what happened. So one of the biggest missions we're trying to push forward is to let them know that you suffer from a disease, a substance abuse problem. Doesn't mean you're a bad kid. Doesn't mean you're a bad parent because your kid has this problem. 40 million people in America that suffer from alcoholism and addiction. So the whole image of the junkie in the alley with the needle isn't the truth anymore. And the more we can get that out there to people, to let them know it's okay to admit that they need help, the more lives that we're going to save. Okay, just a quick synopsis right there. What's happening now, and one of the issues that we're dealing with is prescription drugs. This is the precursor to heroin addiction for about 80% of the people. Okay, I'll be 5 minutes. What happens is this disease is progressive. There's four criteria for a disease. Primary, progressive, incurable, and fatal. Okay, the progressive part is what's important. All diseases, cancer, leukemia, heart disease, they all fit those 4 criteria. Primary, progressive, incurable, and fatal. How it's progressive is that I take 1 or 2 Vicodin painkillers one day. The next day I need 3 or 4, 5 or 6, 7 or 8. What happens is that I'm allergic to opiates. My body has a natural allergy, it hijacks my brain. The next thing, all I can think about is the next high. So that is how the progression works. Eventually, the pain pills stop working. I'm cut off from my source, and at $5 a pill, when I was up to 30 pills a day, it's 150 bucks a day. I was up to 50 at one time. Now, heroin was 10 bucks a hit. Now, in the beginning, 10 or 20 bucks will take away the withdrawals from the pain pills. But at the end, you're up to $200, $400, $500 a day. So this is where it starts. It starts in the medicine cabinet. Now, some signs to look for this disease, because even though we're all different, we all kind of have the same symptoms. It's a disease based on self-centered fear and isolation. So what you're going to see happen to some of these kids that are in the progressive stage of this disease is they're going to start to isolate. They're going to start to draw away from the normal crowd. If they're using, you're going to see pinpoint pupils. They're going to start itching their skin because when you're on opiates and you're itchy all the time, they're always going to be hot. Okay. You're always going to be hot. If they're banging heroin, if they move down to that, you're going to see long sleeve shirts in very hot weather. If they're smoking or snorting, you're going to see cut up pens, foils, and straws, broken pens, foils, dollar bills. And the way that heroin is packaged is in capsules that are clear. So one of the biggest mistakes we make as addicts is if you look in the guy's or girl's bathroom and you see little empty capsules floating in the bathroom, and that's how we get caught about 60% of the time by our loved ones. So usually we do have a little bit more time, but we want to leave time for questions and answers and everybody to speak. So Courtney is going to talk about her experience as an addict too. Thank you.
No, Amber's going to talk. Hi everyone, my name is Amber Kite. I am a grateful recovering heroin addict. I'm just going to go a little bit of how I got into heroin and the steps that took from where I was to where I am. My addiction started around age 12. I started out smoking marijuana and drinking. Soon after that, I started experimenting with prescription medications such as Valium, Xanax, Vicodin, Percocet, Oxycontin, and any and everything else. I liked anything that made me feel better. I kind of felt like there was something wrong with me then, but I was young and I just thought I was having fun. And I thought I'd eventually grow out of it. Most 12-year-old kids were playing with friends, hide and seek, tag, riding bikes, normal things that 12-year-old kids do. Not me. I was different. I hung out with kids that were a lot older than me, riding around cars, smoking weed, drinking and driving. Not very smart decisions on my part. Let's see. I thought it was cool. I thought it was a cool thing to do. I thought I was a big kid when really I was young. I can remember feeling awesome, in quotation marks. I loved the feeling of being high or being drunk. I don't know what it did for me or what purpose it served, but I just loved the feeling. I got introduced to heroin about 5 years ago. It started out socially and quickly became an everyday necessity just to get out of bed in the morning. I was in denial for a long time. I felt like I didn't have a problem because I was a functioning addict. I was a single mom. I took care of my kids. I went to work. I went to school. I kept up on my bills and handled my day-to-day business. I thought just because I was doing things that I was supposed to be doing, I didn't have a problem. Well, little did I know. After using secretly for a few years, some things started to change. I dropped out of college, which I was intending to be a nurse. I distanced myself from family and friends, family functions and friends that weren't using. I started slacking on my parenting and on my bills, and soon after lost everything. I lost my daughter, my house, my car, and most importantly, I lost me. I became super depressed. I hated myself, and every time I got high, I prayed that I'd overdose and die. I didn't want to live anymore. It was a scary, scary, dark, miserable place. I knew I couldn't spend the rest of my life like this. This was not the life I ordered, basically. I hated everything about me. I voluntarily signed myself up for outpatient treatment in 2010. I had the desire to quit using. I was lacking the willingness. I didn't want to do the footwork to stop and stay stopped. Needless to say, I continued using. I went to my first inpatient treatment in February 2011 in Quincy, Illinois. I stayed for 3 days and I left. I wasn't home for an hour and I was getting high again. I used for months and months after that. About 8 months later, by the grace of God, I got arrested and I caught a felony drug charge. I sat in jail for a couple days and was lucky enough to get put into the drug court probation program through Madison County. I struggled for a few months in the program and ended up back in jail 7 times in 6 months. Also in that 6-month time period, I made 2 trips to residential treatment again in Bloomington, Illinois. Drug court saved my life. I owe a lot to the drug court program in Madison County. As sad as it is to say, but I love drug court. My new clean day is June 2nd, 2012. I managed to stay clean through the good days and the bad. By no means am I cured from the disease of addiction. I struggle with the thoughts and cravings daily. Just like any other disease, there's medication. My medicine to keep my addiction under control is I work a solid 12-step program. I work with a sponsor. I do something positive for my recovery every day, whether it be step work, AA meetings, service work, helping others, and most importantly, I do not use no matter what. I do outpatient treatment 4 days a week through Chestnut Health Systems for 3 hours a day. I do family counseling with my daughter, one-on-one work with my counselor, and just recently, through the past 5 years of losing everything, I was recently awarded custody again of my daughter, and by doing the next right thing, things get better every day. I'm no longer just existing anymore. I'm living, and I'm happy with the person I'm trying to become. I don't consider myself a victim of addiction. I'm a survivor.
I'm a recovering heroin addict. I'm going to have 9 months in a couple of weeks, which is awesome. But my addiction started, I was in junior high. First time I got high, I was 12. I thought I was crying, went home, told her what I did. And she didn't yell at me. She didn't scream, ground me, nothing. It was, okay, I'm glad you told me, don't do it again. And I did for months. And then I started to smoke weed again on a regular basis. And it kept going and going. And then eventually, I started taking prescription pills, not very often, just occasionally, and then eventually, it was just more and more and more. And, I thought I was having fun. I thought it was a cool thing to do, and, I was having a blast doing it. And then, when I was 15 years old, I had tried heroin one time at that point in my life. And, I had a traumatic experience in my own personal life, that I had to deal with, and I didn't know how to cope with it. And I started using more, I sought out heroin because I knew what it did to me. It made me black out, it made me pass out. I didn't have to acknowledge my feelings, I didn't have to feel anything. And, and that just, it started, and it would go little by little, and then it just got so big. By the end of my addiction, I had like about a $200 to $300 a day habit. I mean, it was, I remember so much of that, and it's sad, and I got expelled from high school my junior year. In high school, they thought I had overdosed at school. They called an ambulance. after expulsion, I got sent to an outpatient treatment out in Belleville, Illinois, and the counselor I had allowed us to get high. He would sign a paper every week for me saying I was clean, I didn't drop dirty, as long as I wasn't using my drug of choice, which was heroin, which was pot, was an opiate, you know, so as long as I was doing Xanax or coke or stuff like that, I was okay to get high. They didn't care, you know, and luckily he did get fired eventually. You know, I was already out of there, I was gone, and I went back to high school for my senior year, back to Waterloo, and my parents thought I was clean, you know, and I can say my first week back in school, I didn't get high because I was terrified. I did high right after school, but I was so scared I didn't want to get expelled. You know, I wanted to graduate, you know, I wanted to be able to wear that cap and gown and go across that stage, you know, and I didn't get that chance. I continued to use, after about a week, I was using before school, and then finally I was using in school. I'd be in the bathroom, shooting up, snorting, popping pills, whatever I had to do. I mean, I was selling stuff to kids younger than me. I was selling pills in the bathroom at my high school. You know, and no one figured this out until later, and I mean, that's because I talked to my assistant principal and principal about it when I got clean. You know, and then my first clean date was actually February 1st, 2012, and I would kind of either clean on the 1st if I hadn't gone back out. My assistant principal and principal came to visit me in treatment twice. Once on a visiting day, and then once for my graduation. And that was just, it was a wonderful experience, you know, and I did go back out shortly later. I got out of treatment February 28th, 2012, and I started getting high again April 1st of 2012. And I continued to use, I get like a day or two clean here and there. And finally with my last use, in Belleville, Illinois, there is this thing that's called Bethany's Place or Naomi. It's a needle exchange. You can go there, you can get clean needles, look into you with water, cookers, whatever you need, basically you sit there and stick a needle in your arm and accept the needle. Yeah, and then like the Narcan, the drug that they give you for risk, they'll give you that. I mean, my last use, I had that with me. You know, my last use though, I overdosed, and the people I was with took me to the hospital, dropped me off, and then stole my car. And, you know, my parents had thought I was staying at a friend's house who didn't use, and that was originally my plan. You know, there was something that happened that it just, literally, I justified me getting high because I got mad at somebody. That's how sick this thinking is. You'll get high over nothing. I mean, oh, you said hi to me and I'd like to wonder your name. That's where this thing takes you. And that's what I did. You know, they dropped me off, and my parents got a phone call. I don't know, probably 11:30, 12 midnight, something like that from me from the hospital. Hey, I just overdosed. Can you please come get me? You know, and my parents were scared. I mean, my mom got so mad at me. She yelled at me. She hung up on me, and I thought she wasn't coming. Because, I mean, she had told me the last time I relapsed that they were kicking me out because I was 18 and they didn't have to deal with it anymore. You know, and I thought they were coming to get me, and I thought they were done with me. And, you know, I called my mom, like, I don't know, maybe an hour later. I'm not really sure of the time span. But, you know, I called my mom, and she said they were on their way. And, I mean, I don't think I've ever been so happy in my life. And, I mean, they got there. And I have a younger brother. He is getting ready to turn 12, and he couldn't even sit in the hospital room with me. He couldn't look at me because, you know, I was different. You know, I wasn't sissy, I was different. And I mean, he wouldn't come see me when I was in treatment either. And, I mean, it scares everybody. Like, you know, this isn't just something that affects just you as an individual. Like, my addiction and my disease doesn't affect me. It affects everybody around me. My family, my brother, my grandparents, it affected everybody in my life, you know? And it took a lot for me to see that anybody even cared. Because I didn't think anybody cared. You know, I didn't care about myself. I was trying to kill myself, you know? I was to the point, towards the end, I wanted to overdose. I wanted to die. You know, I went down to animalistic instinct. I didn't care. You know, I was lying, I was cheating, I was stealing. You know, I stole my parents' wedding rings and pawned them. And I got them. That was one of the only things I didn't let the pawn shop keep. But I mean, I was doing that, you know, and I didn't care who knew. You know, I would borrow money from my little brother. And, you know, I'd be like, Chase, I need this much money. Can I have it? And he'd be like, yeah, just give it back. I never gave it back. It was gone. You know, I mean, once I got clean, I did give it back to him because, you know, I did remember stuff like that eventually. But, I mean, you don't care who you hurt and what you do. I know I didn't. I mean, I hurt so many people with what I did. I mean, through my addiction, I managed to catch one felony charge, and I'm currently on probation. I have a pending charge here in St. Clair County, and I don't know what's going to happen with that yet. and that was from the night I overdosed, because the 9/11 Good Samaritan Act, that passed like right after I overdosed. My clean date is May 22nd, 2012. And, you know, that passed like right afterwards, and I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I was told by the doctors at the hospital that the police weren't going to show up. Well, they did. I mean, and that was terrifying. You know, I don't know what's going to happen. You know, there's a possibility I might go to jail clean. But the fact is I'm clean, and I don't have to worry about having to pick up again, because I know what I need to do to stay clean today. You know, and for that, I'm grateful. Like, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to do this today. So thank you for asking me to be here, and that's all I have.
Love you, Courtney!
One thing real quick, David has our contact information, me and some of our partners, for counseling, treatment referrals, detox services, employment, housing, multiple different areas that might be of need if someone needs our assistance. So if anybody ever needs us, not for students, but for others, feel free to get my number or Philip's number or our web address from them. Everything we do is volunteer and free. So, okay. Thank you.
I've never done this before in front of a bunch of people. I've done plenty of TV interviews as a Democrat. But my name's Chris. My daughter was Jennifer Heroin. The last school she attended was this school. She never made it past 7th grade. She started out doing Xanaxes, Vicodins. One thing led to another. Come to age 15, she was doing heroin. I didn't know until she was 18 years old. She hid it from me. This is a picture of Jen. I thought for years this kid was sober in this picture, but she was high on heroin. She robbed my mom. We had her arrested. This is a picture of Jen. The last time we seen her in jail. She did 5 months. They ordered her to go to Gateway. I begged and I pleaded with them. Don't send my kid to Gateway. Send her out of town. Gateway is right in my backyard. They let her out September 26th. I got a call she got there about 2. I took her to clothes, everything. I got a call about 5 o'clock. Jennifer's gone. She took off. Jennifer called me to let me know she was still okay. Promised me, Mama, I ain't gonna do the heroin. I've been off for 5 months. I feel good. September 29th, of course, we knew. St. Clair County pulls up my driveway. I'm all excited. I'm thinking, yeah, they found her. I go out there, I was like, did you find her? They asked me, does your daughter have a tattoo on her ankle? Right then I knew my little girl was gone. Yesterday was 4 months that my baby girl's been in the ground. I knew I had to do this. Today is even, I don't know why it ended up being today for this. Right now, in East St. Louis, Megxai, the feds, all of them is pleading to the courts to have charges against the people that did this to my kid. They knew about the 911 call. My daughter, I thought my daughter was the second person to come out of this heroin dealer's house. Come to find out she's number 4. They've done a great job. If it wasn't for my daughter, these people would still be on the street. My daughter died for a purpose. She saved a lot of lives since she's died. Amber was Jennifer's best friend. And I don't know if this will bother you guys, but for some reason, something told me to do this to make it more real. So, I mean, you can think, judge me, whatever, but this is the last picture I got in my head of reality with my daughter. This is my little girl in her casket. My granddaughter was born a month to the day we buried Jen. She was so excited about Maddie being born that she couldn't wait to hold her, and she never got to hold her. And on the 911 Samaritan thing, I'm all for it, but just like this guy knew, he wouldn't get in trouble as long as he called 911. He wanted my daughter dead. And he waited too late to call. They said if he would have called, Jen would survive. Jen didn't die from, well, they got it as an accidental overdose because she had Xanaxes, the heroin in her system. But they said to come down to the basic truth, my daughter drowned in her own vomit because they let her just lay there. And it really does all come down to Xanaxes and vitamins. You know, I was that cool mom. I let my kids smoke weed because I never dreamed that my kids would ever do anything like heroin, shoot up with needles. My kid had track marks all up and down her body. It was disgusting. But that 5 months in jail totally turned her life around. I really thought she was going to make it, but she never did. And it's just an eye-opening experience. I mean, I've been on a mission ever since. I ain't really had my own time to mourn over my child's death, because I couldn't save my kid. I don't know, something just keeps telling me, keep going to save these other kids, because now it's turning into younger kids using the heroin. My daughter's the youngest one in St. Clair County. The youngest one in Madison County, she was 17 years old. And I can't handle seeing any more kids die from this. It's just totally uncalled for. And I guess that's it.
Okay, if we can give another round of applause and huge thank you for our guests. That takes a lot to come to share a personal story. And I just want to take an opportunity to reiterate, you know, one of the reasons that it was pressed on me to make sure we put some people in front of you, some of these kids are our very own. We are seeing these things right here, right now. And I was kind of thinking after I met with them the first time, gosh, do I know anybody personally in this situation? Have I experienced this? And ironically enough, as soon as I got to my parents' house, my mom asked me to talk to a fellow because his daughter had just gotten in trouble right over in Fallon Middle School for having drugs. The same fellow's daughter was also the one that had passed away within the last year of an overdose of heroin. So now he's got 2 kids dealing with this. My point is this, it's serious and we need to know what's going on, and for no other reason than for early identification so that we can help. I didn't see one person up here that said, I wanted my life to go to hell. I wanted to be hooked on drugs and feel the way I felt. What I did hear, though, was people looking for a sense of belonging, people struggling with some things at home, all kinds of dynamics that we see within our kids here. So the only point of this, and all I'm asking you to take with you, is that it's real. And if you have a kid in your class that's looking a little different, looking a little lethargic, any other symptoms, signs that we want to nod, sleeping extra, it's the middle of summer, it's 100 degrees, and I've got my long sleeves, so I'm trying to hide something. Anything that sparks you as being odd and you haven't seen that with a kid, you can never be too safe to bring those things to our attention. You never know whose kid that might save later on. So in a nutshell, that's the point of this, and I want you guys to all know that we have this situation going on right here at CMS. Again, we have confiscated drugs of that nature. Xanax, Vicodin, Mr. Howell, help me out. Tylenol 3, any and everything that they thought was something that could get them high. Mostly Xanax. At least, gosh, we probably put 4 or 5 kids on 4. So again, it's serious and it is here. So please be aware of it so that we can show our due diligence in helping solve this problem within this community. We can't save the world, but we can deal with the kids that come into this building and make sure that we're seeing them in a way that's responsible. Are there any questions, any things that you would like to address with the panel, the group of individuals that are here? Any things you've been wondering? This is the time. Okay, again, I'd like to thank all of you for coming. We definitely appreciate your time efforts. We empathize with your situation. You are in our thoughts and prayers. And we will continue to work with you as we try to, make this not an issue here anymore and save as many lives as possible. So again, round of applause for him. Thank you.